It's no secret that humans make an impact on the planet. Endangered species, deforestation, global warming, all huge world changes that can be traced back to one thing: humans. Today we will go over 3 examples of just how destructive humans can be. Anthrax Island. Grenada Island is located in Grenada Bay, just off the shores of Scotland. The island, which is a mere 1.2 miles in length, was once covered in trees, but now sits barren and uninhabited as it has been since the 1920s. Until recently, stepping foot on this tiny island was forbidden. It's said that it was so contaminated with biological weapons that disturbing the area would release massive amounts of anthrax into the air. During World War II, military scientists of Britain's biology department began researching the use of biological weapons. In a series of experiments, codenamed Operation Vegetarian, the scientists hoped to develop a way to infect the German beef supply with anthrax. The strain of anthrax, Volum 14578, was chosen as this particular strain becomes more virulent as more people are exposed. That is, it becomes easier to infect and damage more hosts. And although gastrointestinal anthrax is rare, it is just as deadly. While other forms of anthrax cause abscesses of the skin and throat, Volum 14578 would cause bleeding in their digestive system, with a mortality rate of about 60%. All they needed was a place to do the testing. The scientists knew the tests would cause long-term contamination of the anthrax spores, so they sought out a remote location. Grenada Island was easily found suitable, and the British government requisitioned it from the owners. In 1942, a 50-man team headed by meteorologist Sir Oliver Graham Sutton and microbiologist David Henderson headed to the island to begin Operation Vegetarian. The team brought 80 sheep along with them for testing. As seen on videotapes that became declassified in 1997, the experiments consisted of detonating an anthrax bomb above a group of sheep. Once the bomb was set off, a brownish cloud wafted towards the sheep. Later in the video, the sheep are shown being incinerated. The sheep all died within days of exposure to the anthrax spores. The scientists abandoned Operation Vegetarian when they discovered that releasing anthrax spores in the amounts they were testing would leave German cities uninhabitable for decades. Also, they were unable to decontaminate the island after the experiment had been carried out. In 1945, the original owner of the land requested the land to be returned to him. Due to the contamination still being present, this was not possible. The government agreed to take responsibility for the island and its cleanup. The family of the owner would be able to purchase the island back for £500 once that was completed. Many years passed before anything was done about the island. It was deemed too expensive and too dangerous to decontaminate, and the government quarantined indefinitely. It wasn't until 1981 that the idea of decontamination of Grenada Island came up again. Newspapers began receiving messages from Operation Dark Harvest. The messages demanded the immediate decontamination of the island. Operation Dark Harvest claimed they had a team of microbiologists collect contaminated soil from the island. One message threatened to leave the soil at appropriate points that will ensure the rapid loss of indifference of the government and the equally rapid education of the general public. 2 boxes of samples were distributed. One was left at the military facility in Porton Down, another was left outside a government office where the Conservative Party was holding a conference. Although the Porton Down sample contained anthrax bacilli, the other sample did not. Finally, in 1986, decontamination began. Over 300 tons of formaldehyde diluted with seaweed was sprayed over every inch of the island. The topsoil with the highest contamination was also removed. Then, to test the safety of the island, a flock of sheep was placed there. Those sheep remained healthy. In 1990, 4 years after decontamination attempts, the island was deemed safe. And as promised, the family of the original owner was allowed to purchase the island back. For 48 years, the island sat in a state of ruin that could only be caused at the hands of humans. The Korean DMZ. It doesn't take deadly biological weapons to ruin an area. Human interaction can sometimes be enough to completely decimate an area. Along the border of North and South Korea is a 2.5-mile wide stretch of land known as the Korean Demilitarized Zone, or the DMZ. The DMZ was established in the Korean Armistice Agreement and was to serve as a buffer zone between the two countries after the Korean War. Although the DMZ was meant to keep a peaceful border between the two countries, the North Korean side has primarily become a way to prevent its citizens from leaving. And though the zone is demilitarized just beyond the zone on both sides, it is the most militarized area of the world. North Korea keeps thousands of artillery pieces near the zone. Some experts estimate that as much as 60% of North Korea's artillery is located here. If going off its name, you may think that the area should remain peaceful, but it is no stranger to violence. In 1968, a 31-man North Korean team crossed the DMZ and attempted assassination on Park Chung-hee, the South Korean president. Shortly after that, North Korea captured a US Navy intelligence ship. In response to this act, the US and South Korea increased its patrols along the southern side of the DMZ. One of the most memorable events involved a poplar tree. This particular tree blocked the view between a UN observation point and guard post. In 1976, 2 US Army officers, along with a South Korean squad, were sent to trim the tree. North Korea had been notified of the trimming and did not object. When the trimming began, the North Koreans ordered the crew to stop. When they did not, the North Koreans killed the 2 American officers and wounded many others. Operation Paul Bunyan was carried out days later to complete the trimming of the tree. This operation consisted of B-52 bombers and attack helicopters. When all was said and done, the tree was reduced to a stump. In an odd turn of events, although this stretch of land was once a war zone, it has remained untouched for decades. This has allowed nature to take over, and now it is one of the most undeveloped areas in Asia. It has become home to many species of birds and other animals, including 2 species of endangered cranes. Except for the more than 1 million remaining landmines, it may be one of the safest areas for animals in Korea. Bikini Atoll. Sometimes referred to as Escholtz Atoll, Bikini Atoll is a coral reef located in the Marshall Islands. In 1946, all 167 of its inhabitants were relocated and a series of nuclear testing began. At the time, the United States was deep in a nuclear arms race with the Soviet Union. From 1946 until 1991, it was all about who could make the most and more highly advanced nuclear bombs. After the relocation of all of its people, the US Navy made Bikini Atoll a ship graveyard. There were a total of 95 ships, varying from battleships to submarines, brought into the atoll. If the ships were an active fleet, it would have been the 6th largest in the world. The first of these tests was named Operation Crossroads. Beginning on July 1, 1946, Operation Crossroads had 2 different detonations. The first, Able, was dropped by aircraft and exploded at an altitude of 520 feet. It was, however, over 1,500 feet off target. The detonation only sunk 5 of the ships parked in the atoll. This detonation raised the surface sea temperature by 99,000 degrees Fahrenheit, causing 98-foot waves. Blast columns also reached the 230 feet to the lagoon floor. On July 25th, the second detonation, Baker, was detonated. Baker was detonated 90 feet underwater and took out 8 ships. This detonation also created a condensation cloud that contaminated the ships with radioactive water. The ships took on so much contaminated water, more than they expected, and were no longer able to be used for testing and were sunk instead. A third detonation, Charlie, was planned but was scrapped due to the inability to decontaminate the ships from the Baker test. Charlie was later used in Operation Wigwam in 1955. The Castle Bravo test was the next series of tests to take place. These tests were meant to test a new design using a dry-fuel thermonuclear bomb. On March 1, 1954, the bomb was dropped. While they were expecting a 6-megaton explosion, what they got was a whopping 15-megaton explosion. To put this in perspective, that was 1,000 times more powerful than the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs of World War II. It was the most powerful nuclear weapon detonated by the United States. Because of the unexpected size of the detonation, unexpectedly large contamination followed. the contamination spread to nearby islands off the Rongelap, Rongerik, and Utrik atolls. Rongelap and Rongerik atolls were evacuated 2 days later. Utrik atoll wasn't evacuated until the third day. Rongelap atoll was covered in at least 0.8 inches of irradiated calcium and ash. Almost all the residents developed radiation sickness. Sickness included itchiness, sore skin, vomiting, diarrhea, and fatigue. They also complained about burning eyes and swelling of their neck, arms, and legs. Only 90 minutes after the detonation, a Japanese fishing boat was also covered in the irradiated ash. 23 men were exposed and developed radiation sickness. You would think after all of that, testing would be over. That, however, was not the case. Later in July 1956, Operation Red Wing was carried out. This was a 17 detonation test, 6 of which took place at Bikini Atoll. In the years 1954, 1956, and 1958, 20 more bombs were detonated at Bikini Atoll. And even more disturbing, in April of 1958, Operation Hardtack was carried out. This was a 33 detonation test. The last series of 10 detonations were set off in July of 1958. Although the residents of these seeming island paradises were promised they would be able to return home, this was demolished by the government's overzealous testing of so many nuclear weapons. There is no telling of how long it will take before the area is safe for humans to live on again. But what do you make of these atrocities? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.